Thank you. All things considered, I'm hanging in there and not complaining.
Well, you seem like you're doing great with all of this stuff that's happening with your marriage boot camp got renewed, and you got now you're planning a new podcast, or is your podcast already recording and what?
Nope. So we're just taking the pitch out this week. So I'm with ICM with those guys now, and we were we're just kind of looking at stuff as everything kind of went down in 2020. What folks may be having an appetite for 2021. So we're just taking it out. It's going to be called "We've Got Issues" because we do. And it's just just a good listen. Nothing too heavy, but talking about some things that just kind of get us all hitched up as we're just trying to get through this life thing. And so I'm excited about it. Hopefully we'll get picked up somewhere and go from there.
Well, I'm excited for you. And this podcast, just to give you a little background, it's all about notable musicians sharing their stories, solutions for mental health. 2017 was a tough year. We lost Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, Chester Bennington of Linkin Park. And so, I really wanted to go a step beyond just normalizing the conversations, but also providing solutions. So, this is why it's so great to have you on, because let me tell you, everyone can relate to relationships, especially being stressed at this time. So, of course, just be yourself, open and honest. And the podcast is pre-recorded, so I am going to create a great introduction for you. Therefore, we can just get right into the questions.
Dive right in.
But is there any questions that you have for me before we start?
How long are we going for?
I have us down for 30 minutes. Perfect. But do you have any any restrictions for time or anything? I'm going to try to.
This is post 2020. There are no hard outs on a Zoom.
Okay.
That's all good.
Okay.
It's whatever.
You know what I love about you, Dr. Ish, is that, we met before you started Marriage Boot Camp.
Time ago with Neil. How long was that? 2010? 11?
No, God, maybe it was, I don't think it was that long. Maybe it was 2014 or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But still, what I love about you is that you've been this intelligent, down-to-earth doctor that just speaks to people on their level. And you really haven't changed, because, you've gotten some pretty great fame there with the Marriage Boot Camp.
Is that what we're calling that?
What do you call it?
I don't know yet.
I was watching the hip hop edition, which is, which you got CeeLo Green and you got,
Oh, he was amazing. You talk about a true musician, right? He's, you're just walking through and in between shooting, or they have a little break, and he will just go over to the piano and just start playing something. It's just wow. Just really, really. We've had some, quote unquote rappers and that, but then you really had some talented just musicians who came through there. I'll tell you who else. For everything that he keeps going on, that whole carnival he keeps around him, Aaron Carter's a hell of a musician. Same thing.
Really?
He would go in, sit down at that computer, and he'd blast off a song, and you'd be like, holy shit. Just really cool stuff to see. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I interviewed for film and interviewed musicians, and I stuck with music because I found that, their personas are so interesting, and everything that they put out is 100% them, but
otherwise you're never going to hear it. They're never going to put it out if it's not.
Yeah. And they're also very raw and honest. So that's always interesting.
Yeah.
But,
well, in music is its whole other universal language, right? When we hear a minor key, we feel something. It taps into that. And so I think it's one of those universal forms of communication. And it's, I don't understand it. I don't know how folks create it, but I know I love it when I hear it, that whole kind of thing. But it's, it talks to you, it gets you in touch with, it can really get you in touch with a deeper level of emotion, at right when it's supposed to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the healing part, is because when we find that somebody is singing about something that we feel, then we don't feel so alone. And when we're in a dark place, that's when you really need somebody to say, you know what, I understand how you're feeling. Yeah, that's a great thing. But, I wanted to, we were talking about the craziness. We've got the pandemic, we've got the lockdown. And, that's put a strain on a lot of relationships. I mean, what do you think what do you see as some of the greatest challenges for couples during this time?
Well, I think one of the greatest challenges is just to learn how to be patient with each other, because we really ran thin on that. We ran thin on two things in 2020. We ran short on patience, and we ran short real quick on empathy, right? We just didn't have time for it. And part of that was, imagine, God forbid, if your house is on fire, right? What do you do when your house is on fire? You reach for those things that are important to you first. My partner's here, my husband, wife, my partner's here. Where are the kids? Honey, grab the kids. Now I got the car keys. I got the money, right? These are some clothes. We need some things to be okay. And so in 2020, we all realized that we weren't okay. And it was like our house was on fire. And so we kept those things that we needed to feel good super, super close. And we had very little patience for anything and anyone else who didn't help us feel that way. And a lot of us figured out that our partner was one of those people. So it's hard, right? Yeah, it was extraordinarily difficult.
Well, also, like, the time that we had to do other things to distract us, either from our relationships with our intimate, partners, and also the relationships that we had with ourselves. We, have more time to be alone with our thoughts. So, and then having to also turn on a dime. We've had to we've been faced with a lot of stresses kind of all at once.
Yep.
But
that's the other thing, the thing you just touched on, patience with each other, but a lot of us ran out of patience with ourselves, right? We're in the West. This is part of our culture, is we like to keep going. We like to go on to the next thing. We don't like to sit still and sit quietly and be alone with our thoughts, because we might not like what we're thinking, and we might not like what we're thinking about them, or more importantly, about us. And so that was one of the things that really forced us to sit and do. And a lot of us are very uncomfortable with that. And so that just led to more of the relationship toxicity that we saw. Now, do you know what the number one story came out a few months ago? Do you know what was the number one question asked in 2020? Number one question.
How do I spend more time alone and be happy with that?
That's great. That's a smart question. Number one question in 2020 was, why do you do it that way? Right? Talking to your partner. Why do you chew that way? Why do you do the dishes that way? Why do you breathe that way? Why do you walk that way across the floor? Because we were getting on each other's nerves. Right?
Yeah, even the littlest things.
The small things. When you don't, in psychiatry, we call it frustration tolerance, right? When you're not feeling well, if you're depressed or you're sad or you're anxious or you're having some issues going on, your frustration tolerance goes down to zero, and there's very little you can do. It just makes everything get on your nerves. And so part of that is just understanding for 2020, as we tried to get through 2020, as we try to get through our relationships, people are doing the best they can. And if they could do it better, they would probably do it better. But what they're showing you is the best they got for today. And so you've got to be able to take people at face value where they're coming from, and then work within those confines.
Well, with COVID and the lockdown, the pandemic, and also the stress of what's going on politically, what kind of advice would you give couples? You said patience is really important. Yeah. What are some other things you could think of that can be really valuable during this time where we have, so much time together.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that I could tell couples is make sure you're telling each other the truth. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to tell yourself the truth about what's happening, right? Because whatever we're getting into it about, whatever I'm not liking or loving about you today, whatever's getting on my nerves today, we've got to be able to tell ourselves the truth about why that is, and what that's not. And so there's one question that will literally save your relationship if you're getting caught up in those type cycles. And that question is, whenever something is going on and they did something you don't like, or they're chewing too loud, or they're sleeping too long, or not sleeping long enough, or they're not picking up behind, whatever that thing is, whatever your pet peeves are, stop in that moment and ask yourself this one question: what else could it be? Right?
Mm-hmm. And let your partner know about that.
Right. What else are they doing? Are they intentionally just getting on my nerves? Don't they know that I don't like it like that? Well, okay, mate. Could be that, or what else could it be? I texted you 2 hours ago. You just texted me back now. That must mean you don't. What else could it be? Stop and ask yourself just that one question, and allow the time for you to run through a few different scenarios. Could be their phone truly died. Could be they're truly busy. Maybe they're stuck in traffic somewhere where they don't have any. Could be a million other reasons that don't have anything to do with them not loving Lou like they're supposed to, right? And so if you can just stop and ask yourself that, it's much easier to not take what your partner is doing personally, and you can have a much more enjoyable time tonight.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had the interview with India Sean.
Uh-huh.
And, we talked about givers and takers and codependency.
Yeah.
Can you explain what it means to have a codependent relationship?
Yeah, so that's a good question. A lot of us are in codependent relationships and we don't even realize it, and we don't even know why. So traditionally, what you're thinking about when you talk about, the more classic example is you're in a relationship, one partner drinks, one partner's a flat out alcoholic, the other one doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is the non-drinking partner will spend 90% of their time trying to take care of the partner who drinks, right? Trying to manage their situation, trying to clear all the alcohol out of the house, trying to clear all triggers out of their way, trying to keep them sober and keep them emotionally stable while everybody's life is falling apart. And so that's the true definition of a codependent relationship is when I am taking responsibility for your life. What you think, what you feel, and what you do. I feel overly responsible for that. I'm here to fix it. I'm here to mend it. I'm here to make it as smooth as possible to my own detriment. Because the other thing that happens in a codependent relationship is we think that the sick partner, right? And this can be a drinker, non-drinker, right? This could be a drug user, non-drug user. This could be somebody who's got an eating problem and the other partner doesn't. This could be somebody who's got any type of compulsive thing that's happening, right? Whether it's eating, whether you're an eater, or a gambler, a shopper, sexer, rager, hoarder, whatever those things are, right? That sets up the dynamic for a codependent relationship, right? Now, the other person doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote sick. You could just be one of those people who like to take responsibility for folks who are not functioning on a level that you are, and you still have that codependency that's happening. Yeah.
I do think that happens quite a bit. I mean,
a lot.
Well, I'm going to bring it to myself just because, I'm trying to figure this out myself too. But I noticed that there's a part of me that really can sense when somebody is hurting. Yeah. And I think there's part of me that wants to help and heal. Mm-hmm. I mean, this probably sounds like kind of a common thing, but I'm conscious of it now, but I wasn't before. And I think sometimes it attracts the wrong people for you. It could lead possibly to a toxic situation.
No, possibly about it. It definitely can. And it's like bees to honey, right? Because what do we do when we're out in the world and we all, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from, I don't care what type of life or family you come from, whether you had a whole lot or very, very little. Once you show up here, especially here in the West, it's almost impossible not to suffer from that disease called not enough-itis, right? Who I am just isn't enough. Right? Every time we open our eyes and wake up in the morning, we're immediately bombarded with the images that tell us that who we are in enough. I go on Instagram and I immediately see a guy who's taller, more handsome, got more money, got a nicer car, got a prettier apartment, what all these things, right? People on TV, they got more money, their life is more fancy than mine. I scroll through people's highlight reels and they're going on better vacations, they got better, all of these things. And so we all suffer from that in some way, shape, or form. And so what we're doing is we're trying to go through life trying to get whole. Right? We're trying to look for the next thing. What's the thing that's going to help me feel more whole today and more full today? And that's typically how we attract our partners, right? They have something that we may be missing, right? If I'm bad at saying no, I'm going to naturally be drawn to people who are really good at saying no.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm bad at functioning in this area of life, I'm going to be attracted to somebody who's better at functioning, because together we got a shot at balancing this thing out and coming out whole. And so that's usually, right? It's like bees to honey. You can't describe it. If you put those two people in a room, 9 times out of 10, they're going to find each other by the end of the night, and they're going to be off to the races. That's how it works.
Well, how do we recognize, let's say, when something about ourselves is attracting the wrong kind of person, and kind of reprogramming ourselves to attract the right person, a healthier relationship?
Yeah. So the way you recognize it, we were all born with this amazing navigation system called emotions. Mm-hmm. And they are always guiding you to whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, right? Just you got to just check in with how you feel. If you're doing something you feel joyful, you're probably doing the right thing. Keep going. Mm-hmm. If you're doing something you feel less than, if you're doing something you feel hesitant, you're doing something that just feels downright icky, it's not the right thing. Don't continue to do that. The other thing we were taught here is that in order for me to be deserving, to have the full life that I say I want, I have to suffer through some things, right? I got to bear the cross, and I got to suffer, and I got to have the trials, and I got to have the tribulation. Oh, and I got to and you don't have to do any of it, right? It's the fact that you were born as a physician. When I can tell you, when we call it the miracle of childbirth, it is truly indeed a miracle, because we have no idea how they are coming out so healthy every single time. And you're here, right? You won the lottery. You got a brain that functions, you got a body that functions. So there's nothing else you need to do to deserve that joy and that happiness that you want. So don't get caught up in feeling like you've got to go through this struggle in order to come out on the other side and be rewarded. That life can be its own reward. So that's the first thing. But when you talk about reprogramming and understanding that, so trust your emotions, right? And then just tell yourself the truth about where you are and what you're feeling and why. And then the way you really start to take ownership and start to reprogram in your life is to start changing the story that you're telling yourself. Right? Everything. My dad used to say, there's no mystery to anything. If you just think about it long enough, you can figure it out. And so in life, right, the reason you don't have everything it is that you think you want and deserve is because of the story you're telling yourself of why you don't have it. And right?
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that what we think and how we think also attracts things into our life, because we start to focus on those things and maybe have other things fall away. But that really kind of struck a nerve, because I do think that oftentimes the basis for a lot of problems in relationships and other things has to do with how we feel about ourselves, like the love that we have for ourselves. And what is it that I guess we can do to really, fall more in love with ourselves so that we can be more loving to others?
Yeah. It's lovability, right? What's your lovability level? What are those things that you love about yourself And so again, we've all got a story that we tell ourselves, right? I'm too this, I'm not enough that, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too big, I'm too little, I'm too smart, I'm too dumb. Whatever those stories are, you got to start really paying attention to what those tapes that are running in your brain. Yeah. Go back and check the tape. Did I just call myself stupid for just making a bad decision? I'm not stupid. I just didn't make a great decision. I should do it better. And so check the tape, right? Really start understanding the narrative you're telling yourself, not only about you, but about how life is supposed to work, right? But if your narrative about love is that all guys cheat, well, guess what? Your brain wants to make you life make sense, right? Mm-hmm. And so your brain is going to attract some guys who help you make that story come true. Yeah, there's another cheater and another cheater and another and another and another, right? If your dating story is that, it's a jungle. It's a dating game is jungle out there where you gonna run into some animals, okay? But if you just change that story and say, you know what, dating is a dance. You know what I mean? And I'm just a butterfly. And I'm just now it's a whole difference, right? Even your face changed when I just said that, right? Because it's a whole different idea of how you go about it. Now it's light and it's fun, and I'm going to see where I land, and we'll go from there. So you really got to pay attention to the narrative that you're telling yourself. And again, tell yourself the truth about the thing it is that happened. Right? We've all gone through stuff, and we get to this game where we kind of measure our pain against somebody else's, right? My bad thing was better than your bad thing, so I get to talk about it more. Or my bad thing wasn't as bad as your bad thing, so I don't deserve to feel bad. No, so stop doing that. But whatever that thing was, right? We're all the hero in our own story. We're all the main character in our own movie, and we all got this thing we got to overcome. And so, whatever that thing was, you got to tell yourself the truth about it, right? Because the truth, as you knew it then, once you're a little removed from it, you got a 30,000-foot view. It's probably not the truth as you know it now. So go back and look at that and say, I think I was wrong about that. The truth about that as well. For example, let's say you grew up and you didn't have a dad in your life. So you grew up feeling like crap. Well, as a little kid, the story you start to tell yourself is, well, I wasn't smart enough, or maybe if I was prettier, or maybe if I was more handsome, maybe I was a big, strong boy when he came around, maybe if I could get better grades, I could have done something to make him proud, right? What was the thing that wasn't there in me that I was lacking that made somebody who was supposed to love me not love me, right? You carry this throughout your life, but now you should be able to look, you can be able to look back at that and say, okay, you know what? Actually, I was 3. I was a kid, right? So maybe the truth of that is, maybe this was a guy who was living his own life, being his own main character in his own movie, and he had some things going on that didn't allow him to properly take care and be present for a little boy who was living. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe the truth is it actually didn't have anything to do with me, because I was actually okay, right? And once you can start doing that and start to restructure some of those conversations and take that narrative of the bad thing that happened and tell that story from the end, right? You know how it ended. Didn't kill you. You're here watching me in Mary. You got an iPhone, you got Wi-Fi. Things turned out okay, right? So tell the story from the end. Instead of saying, well, there was that time when they came into my room at night and they would do these things to me. Okay, yeah, that takes you down a whole separate path and makes you relive it. Tell it from the end. You know what? I am so proud of how I am showing up today, because you can't believe what I had to overcome. I am so amazed that I can show up and still fight and still try and still go to achieve and still believe that I deserve some more in spite of the thing that happened. So once you can start telling that story from the end, that's how you really start to reconnect and make some reconnections in that narrative. And then you practice telling that story and see how much more empowered you feel showing up in your life.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, that makes great sense, because you're basically changing, like you said, changing the story in your head.
Right.
But as a psychiatrist, would you say that, like, actually being honest with yourself and being that self-aware is a challenge? Because I know, like, for instance, like narcissism, let's say, that whole condition is based on creating like this narrative that may not be based on the truth, but it also helps them survive to have this narrative. I mean, what do you think in those cases? What to do?
Yeah. So the ability to self-reflect, right? And tell yourself the truth about who you are. You know, the way our personalities develop is through defenses, right? We're born this helpless, vulnerable baby, and we're dependent on somebody else for the next 15, 18, 20 years to help take care of us. And so most of what our personality develops is, and how do I defend against the things that happen that come to threaten me, right? I'm cold or I'm hungry. I got to cry. Come take care of me. But then, and so our personalities kind of develop. I need to be hugged. Let me whine a little bit. I need some attention. Let me fret a little bit, right? That whole thing. And depending on what you feel you need the most depends on what parts of your defenses and your personality develop. So if you're talking about a narcissist, right, that is a very particular personality type. I will tell you as a psychiatrist, they are the toughest patients I ever have. And they're the hardest patients you're ever going to have because they are invested in believing the narrative that they tell themselves, right? Because what's underneath that gruff shell, that tough shell, that hard-edged shell? I'm the best. I'm the smartest. I'm the prettiest. I'm the richest. I'm the grandest. I'm the baddest thing in the jungle. Once you crack that shell, there is a soft, quivering mass of uncertainty and insecurity, and it is very hard to put that back together. I had a doc who I was seeing a long time ago, and he was on the verge of losing his license because he was such a jerk. Right? He was just a jerk. He was great doc. Nobody could deal with him. And once you start to just pelt them with little truth pebbles, well, maybe that's true, or maybe it's this, and they have to start thinking about it. And the day they crack, right? That's the clinical term we use. The day you crack that shell, he literally cried in that office for 30 minutes.
Really?
And it is one of the worst cries you've ever seen in your life. And it just breaks your heart because they're just underneath that shell, they're just a scared little kid, you know? We've all got this thing. Every one of us has something we're pretending not to know about themselves, right? And nobody pretends better than the narcissist, right? They perfected the pretend. Because underneath there, if I let you see me and you reject that, then I got nothing else. That's all I got, right? And that's going to leave me with nothing. And so they're really, really invested in that personality type in particular. It's hard. It's tough. Yeah. Fun to date for a little while. But,
yes, and they kept you in their web, and then, yeah.
Well, and the narcissist, right? The narcissist is extraordinarily charismatic, right? At getting people to follow them and at making you believe that you are the only person who exists in this world, right? They make you feel special because I am so grand and now I'm giving you that opportunity to bask in my glow. So therefore that makes you special, right? Up until the day that you do something that displeases them or doesn't please them or doesn't match up with whatever story, whatever tape they've got running in their head. And then it can get really, really ugly.
Right. Because then you become a threat to their whole persona that, that they kind of survive with.
Right.
So, we talk about toxic relationships with India Sean also. And I was curious because, there's a lot about, family history and what you see growing up that can affect your future relationships. One toxic relationship I just, think of is Rihanna and Chris Brown.
Ooh.
And I know, and but there are a lot of relationships like that where people go back to abusive relationships, even though they grew up knowing that is not a healthy thing. I mean, what is it that brings people back to abusive relationships when logically they know it's not good for them?
I don't think they know it. I think they believe it, right? I think the evidence suggests that it's true, that that's not healthy. That probably isn't going to work. But once you know something, then you usually act on that intelligence, right? I know that the stove is hot when I take the pot off, so I don't touch it. I know that. I don't believe that. I believe it's hot. Let's see. Nope. Right? I know it's hot. I'm not touching it. And so in the end, right, we all pick the love we think we deserve, right? So if we had a good model, great. right? And that puts you ahead of the game. You know, my parents were together for 56 years. I can remember one argument that they had. Not that they didn't have them, but they never let us see them, right?
Mm.
6 kids in the house, and 7 kids in the house, and they just they kept that away. And so if you had a good model, great. But if you didn't, it doesn't mean you're doomed, right? It just means that you've got to really get to work on figuring out your lovability, right? What's my lovability? What's my likability? What are those things that I love and like about me that let me know that I deserve something more, that I deserve to be in a relationship that doesn't hurt, right? That I deserve to be in a relationship where they don't put their hands on me in an aggressive way, that I deserve to be with somebody who can say nice things to me and sweet and tender things and not mean things and make me feel less than, right? So those are those things you've got to tell yourself, because until you know that, you will always justify settling for the other thing because you're feeling less than whole, right? And okay, maybe it's not exactly what I want. Maybe he's not all that great. Maybe she's not perfect, whatever that is means in your mind, but it's something, and something's better than nothing. So that helps. And so you really got to work on identifying those things about yourself that you love, right? That you value, whether it's I'm smart, whether I'm kind, I'm caring, I'm generous. I can really figure out, I'm really good at figuring out problems. What are those things? And then those are your non-negotiables, right? It's like going to a Bentley dealership and buying a Bentley, right? I'm going to talk to the salesman. I got a list of options. Here's what I want. I want it in blue. I want it with the exterior blue. I want the interior beige. I want the starlights on the roof, and I want a V12 engine. What's the price? And he's going, right? And so that's your list of options. And it's non-negotiable. It's a Bentley. The price is what it is. It costs what it costs, right? So this is it. This is the price. It's non-negotiable. This is what I'm bringing to the table, right? You got the brown skin package. You got the psychiatry package, right? You got the undercoating. You got all this. And now I know that there's value in these things, right? And so there's a level of treatment that I'm just not going to accept. Because if you don't set the standard, you don't set the expectation, how do you know when somebody's not meeting it?
Right. And, I remember when I was, just talking about relationships with friends, and, sometimes people would say things like, really write down the qualities that you're looking for, or, say them out loud. And I think, just going back to what you're saying about programming how we think, we start to really solidify and confirm it in our minds, and we end up attracting the person that has those qualities.
I believe in writing them down, Mary. I believe in saying them out loud. In particular, I believe in waking up in the morning and looking in the mirror and having a conversation with yourself, right? Yes, this is me, a psychiatrist, telling people to talk to themselves, right? and tell yourself what you love about you. I love your eyes. Look at those brown eyes. I love that smile. Look at that smile. Because think about how few times we hear that during our week. Right? It's Thursday. I hadn't heard that from anybody else all week long. But, right? And you can, right? Think about, and get used. And it feels so weird, and it feels so awkward, and it feels like, oh, why am I doing this? This just doesn't feel right, because you're just not used to hearing it. And so get used to hearing it, and then you start to believe it.
Well, one thing about talking to yourself in the mirror, which is something I have not thought of, but I always felt like if people, like for instance, with my boyfriend, he'll say wonderful, kind things to me, which is great, but sometimes he's really hard on himself, or he'll call himself stupid or something. Right. And I just thought, if you can just be your own best friend, you would never talk to your best friend or me like that. Right. And I guess it's just this thing where sometimes we tend to be harder on ourselves or expect more from ourselves than others. I was saying that, talking in the mirror would be a good habit, especially during the pandemic, because we're finding ourselves with very few people in our personal space, and some people also being alone. And, that's also something difficult to deal with right now.
Yeah. And the big thing there is just realizing that being alone doesn't mean you have to be lonely, right? We've got to be able to, number one, become our own best company, and enjoy enjoy a good time with ourselves. What are you doing tonight? Well, you know what? I got my Netflix right here. I got my pizza right here, and it's about to be a great time, right? And so you got to get comfortable with that. But take advantage of the tech. Reach out via text. Make that. If your mind tells you to touch base with the old friend, reach out and do it. You never know, right? It's going to help you, but it may be helping them more. So so reach out and take advantage of that. But yeah, it's a tough time. We're all figuring out how we're going to be okay. A lot of us came to the realization that what we were doing wasn't helping us feel okay, or who we were with weren't helping us feel okay, and we got to figure some things out differently coming out of that. But I think one of the bigger things is just understanding how is it that you show up and be the best version of yourself. And that's what a lot of us are trying to figure out for 2020, kind of coming into 21. What are those things I need to do to be the best version of me? And for me, it starts with always telling myself the truth about what's going on with me and what's going on in my life. Because once you do that, then those are the things that kind of help move you forward,
Yeah, I do find, sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable, which is like really saying the hard truth. Sometimes we're embarrassed, sometimes we're ashamed. But I do think that when people can get there and really express their true emotions, it's an attractive thing to hear, right? Because people can tell, people can also, they could tell when you're telling the truth, but they could also, often have compassion for the way that you're feeling, whatever the emotion is,
Yeah, you touched the word that jumped out from what you just said was shame. That's so much of our life revolves around defending ourselves from feeling ashamed, right? Ashamed of how I look, ashamed of what I have or what I don't have, right? Ashamed of what I didn't accomplish or what I didn't get done. And so if you can really do some work around your shame triggers and understand what those are, whether it's, and how you defend against those, right? We're talking about personality types and how they develop. A lot of our personality is how we defend against shame. The shame thing is not being enough. So if I can just look perfect enough, my nose can be straight enough and my hair can be perfect and my body can be chiseled or voluptuous enough, then I don't have to feel ashamed, right? Or some of us feel like, well, if I can just work harder, right? And I can just show up exhausted and I can just tell people I'm just working, so I'm doing everything I can, then I don't have to feel ashamed about my life. So if most of what you're doing in that interaction and most of what they're giving you is about them just trying to feel good, don't have a whole lot to do with you.
Yeah, I think, we all kind of have an idea of what it is to have a good relationship, trust and open communication. But I'm wondering, what are some things that you can give as advice to couples that have been together for a long time, that, to kind of keep the spark alive?
Yeah. Well, so, okay, great question. So we're talking about the connection, right? And how does the connection get severed, right? People say, well, I don't know what happened. We just grew apart. I don't know how. Well, you grew apart because you stopped being curious about each other, right? You felt like you knew it all. You felt like you heard their stories and oh yeah, that's the story about the guy at work, Bob. I remember how that, yeah. I know how that works. Oh yeah, that's about the person who ran you off the road. Got it. Heard this, right? So remember to be curious, right? Because our life, what we did last year, we're going to show up and do some new stuff this year, right? We're going to have some new experiences. We're going to take in some new information and we're going to be somebody new, right? Our cells in our body, every 90 days, they're all kind of regenerated and recreated themselves. Our lives are the same way. We're never the same. I tell people, when you see me this week, take a picture, because when you see me again, I'm going to be somebody totally different. Totally different. And so what happens with partners is we forget to give people the updates. Like last night, I turned my phone off. I woke up this morning, had a message that said automatically updated, right? New software, fixed all the bugs. We never do that with our partners, right? We never update them. The stuff I liked 20 years ago when I was 25, I don't like anymore. The things that I needed from you then have changed. I need some different things from you now. And oh, by the way, I need to update you about what's going on with me. I'm not into that thing we used to do 10 years ago anymore. Let me tell you what I'm into now, but we don't update our partner because we think they may see that we've changed somehow and they may not like it and we may get rejected. They may think it's weird. They may think it's out there and they may not love me as much. And so I might not get the love I need. So I'll just keep it to myself. And so you got to remember to keep that connection clear by giving them the update. Download them on the new version. It's 2021. This is what it is now, right? 2020 is gone. No. Some things are remaining that work well, but this is the new stuff that's coming. And so that's a big part of it. And then the other part is just learning how to be vulnerable with each other. You know?
Yeah.
You got to have that person you can be vulnerable and totally open and honest with, and trust that what you show them, they're going to handle it with sweetness and tenderness and compassion.
Yeah, I guess that's what we have to remember as the listener is to really be careful with our words, or just know that our words make a difference. So, sometimes I think like before you answer somebody, you take a moment to think about what you want to say and kind of wrap it in a nice gift package, so that it's not necessarily reactive. Because I think that's when we can get into trouble, right? Is when we get hurt and we automatically say something and then it's out of our mouth and we hurt someone back. And we may... Yeah.
My dad used to say, John, think 3 times before you speak once and you might be right. Right? Because we're reacting because, right, what the thing they say make me hurt my feelings? Did it make me feel ashamed? Did it make me feel insecure? And not right? Think about why you're about to say the thing you're about to say next. And it's always nice, depending on regardless of who you're talking to, right? And most importantly, when you're talking to yourself, pretend that you're talking to your best friend, right? And they're giving you something. And how would you respond to them, right? That's how you should be responding to anybody. And certainly that's how you should be responding to yourself, with that same sweetness and tenderness and compassion and empathy, and that non-judgmental way. This is what it is, and I hate that. And I'm here to sit with you. That's a compassionate response. Compassion is being able to walk into a room where somebody's sitting in total darkness and not feel compelled to turn on the light. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not a relationship between healed and wounded. It's a relationship between 2 equals, right? And I'm just here to sit with you, because you're my best friend. And sometimes you got to be your own best friend and sit with yourself in that darkness with that same level of compassion.
Well, one thing as you were speaking that I started to think about is when we respond to somebody, we give them our words, that there are words that we get that make us feel great, that we, make us feel loved. And then there are words that make us feel less than or make us feel ashamed. That when those strong emotions happen, whether they're positive or negative, to maybe share that with your partner, because sometimes the same things can be happening and we're not saying anything. And they have no idea that maybe something that they're saying is triggering us or hurting us from the past or something.
Yeah, sometimes they just simply don't know, right? Everybody, because we automatically assume that they know what I know and they think what I think and they live what I live. That's just not true. Sometimes they simply don't know, and so there's a very nice and gentle way to say that. You don't have to be confrontational about it. Because, hey, when I hear that word directed at me, it really makes me feel bad. I wish you wouldn't say that to me. Right? And they honestly may not know. When you wait 2 hours before you just simply send a text back, it really makes me feel like you just don't have any regard for me. I wonder, is that true? Or is it just, what, right? You can always ask for clarification because they may not know how what they're doing is helping you feel. They're not making you feel bad, but they're helping you feel bad, right? And they just may not know. And so it's always simply a matter of clarification. I'm curious about something the other day. When we were at that office party and you introduced me as your roommate.
That's an issue.
Right?
Yeah.
I didn't like that because I'm more than your roommate. So I'm curious about what was going on with you, right? And just see what they say. And you can have that kind of conversation.
Wow, Dr. Ish, I could talk with you all night because you have so much amazing knowledge and you talk so conversationally. But I wanted to know, is there anything else that you would like to say about relationships or about you as a relationship coach? Because you are the premier relationship coach and expert.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've got a pretty high profile client list at this point. And I think the thing that helps me, my job is to show up and tell folks the truth, right? My job is to be the mirror to reflect back to you what you're saying to me, what you're showing me. And I think people have a healthy level of respect for that, because it's not something that you can get from folks, whether it's family or friends or coworkers, whatever that situation is. And my job is just to always, the thing that I do that may be a little bit different from everybody else is I'm here, yes, to challenge some of those automatic negative beliefs you have, but I'm here to always help you get to two different places, right? One place is the place where you allow yourself to tell yourself the truth in a compassionate way. And then the other place is where you allow yourself to accept every single thing about you. Right? Maybe you're too tall, maybe you're too short, whatever, accept it. Maybe you're too big, maybe you're too little, accept it, right? There can always be things you want to change, right? You can and agree to work on, but at no point can you show up and reject some part of yourself, because that part plays with every person you meet and every person that comes into your life. And if you're rejecting it, it's that much easier for somebody outside to reject it. And so the best relationship you're ever going to have is the relationship you have with yourself. So I help people clean up that connection first, and then we've got a much better shot now at having another relationship with somebody else. And just realizing that no matter who you're with, you're just simply not responsible for the lessons other people are put here to learn, right? We're all the main character in our own movie, right? Everybody else in my life is just a supporting actor or actress. That's just the way it is, right? And understand that 90% of what you do, 90% of what people are giving you doesn't have anything to do with you, but it's all about them. And if you can find a way not to take some things so personal and just accept where you are and who you are and love all of it, and get comfortable not only giving it, right? Because some folks are givers, but also get comfortable receiving it. One of the things I had to work on personally was just getting comfortable receiving it. I could give it no problem, but it always felt weird to get it back. I was like, no birthday party for me. No, don't give me anything for Christmas. No, don't make a big fuss over me at all. And then I just had to really tell myself the truth about that, which was, it does feel good for folks to make a big deal out of it. And it does feel good to to be appreciated. And actually, I do deserve that. And that's just the biggest thing. So I enjoy it. I can talk about relationships all day. Grew up with 5 sisters and 8 aunts, and so I got a lot of estrogen in the house. And so there's a lot of talking and a lot of feeling in there. This is me. Yeah.
Well, that I think is really the key to having a healthy relationships, is being able to give, but being able to receive, and having that healthy cycle happen, and having joy to give to that person you love, and having joy also to say, oh, they're giving me this love and I love feeling it.
Right.
And then also we all want unconditional love, right, from our partners. But I think what you're saying also is having unconditional love for ourselves, right, with all of our flaws and all of our mistakes, and just saying, you know what, I am human and I'm trying to do the best that I can. And, I'm all good here.
It does, because if your partner's giving you unconditional love, if you don't think you're worth it or deserve it, it's going to fall flat. And so it's all got to start there, right? And we all go through stuff. We're all battle tested, and it's the scars that make us beautiful, and how we wear them, and how we portray it. And so fly that flag, whatever that flag is, show that scar. That's the thing that makes you you, and it's also the very thing that makes you uniquely beautiful. And so just love it. Yeah.
Wow, what a great way to end the show. I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Ish. I feel better. about myself after this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the Check Your Head podcast.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, you did wonderful. You did great. Thank you so much.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. It was. And, if there's any way that I could help you, sure. I'm always here for you. I know you're going to do this podcast, and that's exciting. And, I wish you all the best with that, with everything that's going on.
Yeah, well, maybe I can get you to return the favor. You can come on. We can, have another chat on my end. That would be great.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. Yeah, I mean, the podcast. Yeah, the podcast really is growing a lot. Like we're number one in music interviews in Europe. Wow. So I'm like, yay! After a year, so I'm happy about that. But let's keep in touch. Let's keep in touch.
Do you produce it yourself, or do you have somebody who helps you with the production on the back end?
You know what? I had an associate producer. I had a recording studio. I had an audio engineer. But when the pandemic hit, I basically had to build a recording studio, at home, do my own editing. And so, in one way, it was good because I got to learn everything about the production of the podcast, but it's also quite a bit. The great thing, though, is that it forced me to use Zoom. And so now I could do interviews anywhere in the world, and it's convenient. Like, for instance, you're sitting here in your beautiful office, your beautiful home. And, I've done interviews in, people in Sweden, and it's really been a joy.
That's
it really
cool.
has.
That's cool. Yeah. No, sounds like some very cool, authentic personalities. Musicians they're a whole nother breed, is that energy comes through raw and real. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
But,
very nice.
All right, Dr. Ishwal, we will keep in touch. So much. And thank you. Okay.
Will there be a link or something when it goes up?
Yes, I will let you know as soon as it drops. And I'll post all about it. I'll tag you. But if you want to repost or do anything like that, that always is like such a huge help.
Absolutely will. Absolutely will. Yeah.
Right.
Keep kicking ass in Europe. I love that.
All right. Thanks so much, Dr. Ish. And it's so good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, I'm Fong, producer and host for Check Your Head, Mental Health for Musicians podcast, where musicians and experts come and share their stories and solutions for mental health and wellness. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like us, please follow us on social media at Check Your Head Podcast. And visit us at checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you'll find over 100 mental health resources that will assist you in your mental health recovery. Also, if you want to show your love, you can donate or buy the merch. We have superhero tees and hoodies for sale to remind you and your loved ones that you are superheroes every day. You rock, and we love you.